Hi, and welcome to Customer Experience Leaders Chat by Nicereply, where we talk to support professionals from all over the world and discuss what's behind their team's success. This interview is brought to you by Nicereply, an all-in-one customer satisfaction tool that helps you measure and improve the quality of your customer service. We are here today with Jeff Beaumont, the Senior Manager of Customer Success Operations at GitLab. Jeff, thanks for being here.
Thank you, Greg. Thanks for having me.
Jeff, I'd like to start off by asking you to describe what SuccessOps is and specifically what your role does. This is a pretty unique role in the industry.
Yeah, so customer success ops is born out of, I guess a way to think about it is that we had sales ops, and that's kind of been industry standard, totally normal. And then as we've grown the CS org, or customer success org in this context, the idea is that, hey, there's a bunch of people that also need support from an operational standpoint. And that could be, and it varies from company to company. It could be things like enablement. It could be developing processes, building out systems such as Salesforce or a CSM tool, reporting, dashboarding, comp. It depends on the company. It can vary. But usually it's going to include things around developing processes, documentation, making sure the systems work, integrating different systems, reporting and dashboarding is kind of the plain vanilla one, and then it can expand or contract from there. And then here at GitLab, what it is we're part of an overall team called Field Operations, which services the entire field. So that's sales, that's our solution architects, our professional services team, our CSMs, or technical account managers, as we call them here. And so I work in a much bigger and broader group, kind of centralized operations team where we have a team for enablement, we have a team for analytics and dashboarding, we have operations, and we have a few other groups, say like a Salesforce administration team and handling all the internal integrations. So it can vary. That's just what it is at GitLab. At plenty of other companies, it has many different forms, but it's all about or the goal of operations is saying, how do we make this team more efficient? How do we, and so we're thinking about especially for a larger team, how do we reduce the number of clicks? So how can we take this process and reduce it from 10 clicks to 2 clicks? Another one is around accountability. How do we make sure that people are doing their jobs and that they themselves, the end user or the CSM in this case, knows where they're at, knows where they stand, and then their manager can work with them, such as a report, like how many accounts do I own, or what activity do I need to do this week to take care of my customers? So accountability would be number 2, and then number 3 would be visibility. So similar to reporting, you can't fix what you can't see. A helpful or apt analogy is sunlight is the best disinfectant, and you can't measure what you can't, or you can't manage what you can't measure. And similar to that, oftentimes a simple report can take it so far, because can take it much further than where it's at currently, because you might not have known that these customers weren't being taken care of, or that these customers are at risk of churning, or maybe that these things are or are not happening. So that's kind of what operations for customer success looks like at different companies, at GitLab, and then kind of the overall goal or intent of it.
Yeah, so what you've described there is a very broad set of tasks. How, given that breadth, given how many things you've described, how do you as a company know that you need a customer success operations team?
So early on, for most companies, customer success operations or enablement or whatever else is usually a duty held by someone else, whether it's the manager, the director at a really small startup, probably CEO. And then that grows. And so as a team grows from, say, 3 founders to 10 people to 20 people or more, what you're going to end up finding is that instead of the CEO owning, things like, to pull an example outside of customer success operations, at the beginning, the CEO is probably going to do payroll. And eventually they're going to find someone and say, hey, I can't keep doing this because I have these other demands. I need to go hire someone to run payroll. And you're going to see the same thing with customer success operations. Initially, the first CSM is going to do it all because they're training themselves. They're figuring it out themselves. And then as that team grows, maybe it's a manager who does that, or maybe it's that one CSM who loves training other people. And it's like, hey, you know what? I really like doing these trainings. I like coordinating this stuff. And so sometimes that person might say, like, we need a CSOps person. I actually want to move from being a CSM to doing that. But as it grows over time, what you're going to find is eventually you're going to hit a tipping point or a breaking point where you say, we have so many CSMs, or we have so many support reps, or so many of whatever, that it would honestly make way more sense for us to invest in either a part-time or full-time or whatever level of team that you need for customer success operations to make the rest of it efficient. An example would be if you have 3 CSMs and you're thinking about hiring a CSOps person, like that CSOps person, all other things being equal, like salary and costs and overhead and everything, would have to make those existing CSMs at least 33% more effective or efficient just on that merit alone, without any other thing, all other things being equal. That said, if you have a team of 10 CSMs, then you're only looking at, that CSOps person only needs to make everybody at least like 3 or 4% more efficient, and it pays for itself.
So yeah, it's very interesting to hear about the scale issue and how you have to drive effectiveness across the entire team in order to justify the role. So maybe the next obvious question is, how do you find those efficiencies?
So there's a few things that I consider. This is probably going to be an overused colloquialism, but I try to start with the end in mind. Like, what am I trying to solve for? And then work back from there. So is the goal simply to reduce a few clicks? Like, okay, but what purpose does that serve? Is that serving the purpose of just making someone's life easier? I mean, there's merit to that. But if the purpose is to say, hey, if we reduce these clicks, that means I can move on to the next issue or the next ticket or the next customer that much faster. And instead of being able to take of this many, only being able to address this many customers, maybe it's like 10 or 20 or 100 or whatever it is, I can take more, cool. Or if it means I can take care of those customers in less time and that frees me up to do other projects, maybe strategic work or writing knowledge base articles or something else, that's another thing. So start with the end in mind is number one. Some of the other things that I try to do when evaluating evaluating customer success processes, and then maybe even to expand your question a little bit, making recommendations for improvements. I try to think of, at least when I join a new company or when someone asks like, hey, what should I do in this scenario? I want to put myself in the CSM's shoes. I want to, at a minimum, shadow them and understand what do they do. Because what you'll find is if you ask someone, hey, what would you like to see improved? They might have a lot, they'll share pain points, and that's a great starting point. But oftentimes what you'll find by watching someone are the things that they're not even aware of themselves, either because they're not conscious of how many clicks that they're doing, or because they don't know that it can be reduced. That person that takes 10 clicks to do that thing, well, that's just the way I've always done it. And they might not know that you can actually get that down to 3 or 4 clicks or 2 clicks or whatever it is. So sometimes I might want to shadow somebody and go, oh, that's how they do this? Oh, there's a way easier way or a faster way, or it takes the same amount of time, but you can glean so much more data in this. And then lastly, I touched on pain points, but another consideration that we need to take into account is, as CSOps, are we focused on solving pain points, or are we focused on opportunities, or both? And there's room for both. We don't have to stick to one or the other, but it's perhaps an analogy would be helpful here. It's like if you go and buy a home. Some people want to buy a fixer-upper. And they're like, you know what? I just want to buy a fixer-upper. It's way cheaper. Or maybe I get to, like, I'm going to demo it. Like, I want to build my own thing, and I can buy a fixer-upper, and I can just level it or strip it down to the studs. I want to do that. Or maybe you say, I just want a turnkey home. And so it's important to know what environment you're entering. Am I jumping into an environment where the first several weeks, months, or even years, I'm just in there like putting out fires and solving problems? Or am I going into a fairly turnkey place where everything's fine, I just need to make a few changes?
So, I mean, that actually is a perfect analogy because it leads nicely into what I was wanting to touch on next. So it sounds like you're driving a lot of projects. You're discovering gaps and you're going to drive change through a set of projects. How is it structured? For example, do you have to get buy-in for each of these projects from leadership in success organizations or executives, or are you seen as kind of the subject matter expert in this area, and the projects that you want to drive just to have automatic buy-in? How does the structure of decision making on what to focus on work within a success operations context?
Ooh, good question. So I think yes to it all. On one hand, there's certain things that when it comes to high visibility projects, you absolutely need to get buy-in, because one executive might want to say, hey, I want to solve this problem. And then you need to get more people involved. There's a group of stakeholders. Another thing that, sometimes I just take it on myself if I just see a project that needs to get done or should be done, and I don't expect too much pushback or questions on that, or if I think people have asked for it in different ways or different ways of phrasing it, I'll go do it. And I'll just transparently share, like, hey, everybody, I'm working on this project. Here's what it is. And then if anyone has a problem with it, then they can raise it with me. I think the third option that I try to do is be a consigliere, and that is be the advocate to the executive or to the leadership team or the management team, and to come in with both when they have suggestions and ideas, to both give critique and feedback on that and say that's a great idea, here's some things to consider, or that's a bad idea, or that can work but we have to do this, this, and this. Or to be able to say, as their advocate, to say, have you considered this other option or timeline or whatever else? And to be able to offer that pushback to them of saying, it's great that you want to launch 10 systems and that you're fired up about all these different things. You want to have all this change, but you need to consider how we're going to roll this out to the different teams, or how we're going to do this, or how we're going to do that. And that takes on a different flavor for different executives and different times of year. It takes on a different flavor before budget season than after budget season, and mid-year as well. But I'd say the things to consider are, is this something where you need to get stakeholder alignment across a bunch, because there's more value in sharing that than not sharing it. The other one is there's going to be smaller things, improvements or whatever else that are going to benefit them because you've been in their shoes before. Like, for example, for myself, I've been a CSM. I've led a support team at a prior company, and I've been a director of customer success. So I intuitively understand what the needs are. So for someone like me, I don't need to necessarily ask, hey, exactly how do you want this report laid out? Because I already have an inkling of, like, okay, if I was in their shoes, I would want to do it like that. And I think that's where having walked in their shoes before is added a lot of value to me here. And then the third point to reiterate is be their advocate, be their consigliere.
Jeff, that's all fascinating. What a very unique role, and in the concepts of DevOps and sales ops, which we all just accept exist. I think there's definitely a place for success ops in our type of industry. Jeff, thanks for joining us today. Really appreciate your input.
Thank you, Craig. Awesome.
And thank you all for listening to Customer Experience Leaders Chat by Nicereply with today's guest, Jeff Beaumont from GitLab. Make sure to check out our other support interviews and more quality content at nicereply.com.